Uh, hey guys, good evening. Today we will be having a introduction to game dev by Tejashwin from 2019 batch. So I'll not be taking any of your time. Baya, you can get started.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Aditya. So greetings everyone. Welcome to today's session of game development and design, where we will be talking a little bit about the introduction and just a little general information about how this area of field works, and a little bit about myself. My name is Sai Tejashwin. I'm currently in my third year in the same college as you guys all are, and I am someone who has good amount of interest in this field, and I'm trying to and trying to develop a career in this. So if you have any if you have any insights, or if you want to ask anything regarding the session or while the session is going on, you can just drop it in the chat if you want, and I'll just look into it after once this session is done. Sounds good. And yeah, I'll start sharing my screen. Aditya, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you just look into it?
Oops, just a second. Are you not able to share a screen?
Yeah.
Just
look into it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Let me just make you. Yep, now you should be able to.
Okay, let's see. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen, you guys.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, let's see. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So getting started with this session, before we go into this, there is probably something you guys would probably expect while we are starting a session, and that is probably, what is this field about? What exactly are we doing here? So the most, if you in the most simplistic terms possible, I could just say it is the making of games, but I am probably sure that's not what you're here for. You're probably not here for something that you can find from a search engine or just by Googling something. Although we can say there is nothing bad about saying it is the making of games, it is not really definitive enough. There is a lot more that goes behind the scenes while developing a game, and there should be a clear distinction while you're trying to make a game and trying to prototype something. When you're trying to prototype something, or you're just trying to make an implementation of a certain mechanic, that is the making of games. That is something you do as your personal project. But when you're trying to work in a company, or when you're trying to publish a game either in the Google Play Store or in Steam, it's a completely different game. The ideas, the decision making, and the optimizations, the decisions that you take, either creatively, analytically, or technically, these can be just shelled into this term called making. So as we draw this line between development and making, you do notice some similarities with software development as well. And you are right. You are probably right. There is a somewhat correlation between software development and game development. Hell, you might even say game development patterns are somewhat a part of software development patterns, because they are so similar. And since it is a part of software development as well, game development, like software development, also has a certain amount of processes that you need to go while you're creating a project. So, and since game development also is very very codependent on the other domains, like other fields of computer science, be it artificial intelligence, data analytics, data science, or even the web. They all play an important part while you're trying to develop a game. And what I mean by it having a wide array of dev tools to meet your requirements is that uh, every language every language today has somewhat a game library, a game framework, or even a game engine catered to it. So if whenever you're trying to learn a new language, there is a high chance probably you would find some sort of game development toolkit related to that game related to that language. So let's not be vague over here and try to go into the development of how these games are made. So as I said, like software development, game development also has a certain set of processes that goes through before you complete your game, and that starts with coming up with an idea, going through its design, trying to look for the proper creative aspects of it, which you could say in the form of game art or 3D modeling. You can achieve this through using Photoshop or Illustrator or even Blender, which is for 3D modeling. This is for the digital part of game development, by the way. If you're looking for the physical part of game development like board games, that is a different part. And after you go through the design part, you end up you now then comes the main part where you program your stuff, where you go through a lot of rigorous parts of testing, debugging as well. This comes uh, this comes under the development phase, which then proceeds with the testing and deployment phase. Deployment meaning once you create your game, you need to like set it up in on a certain platform. This might be your Windows operating system, Linux, or even your mobile phones, and even the web as well. Now the current trend of deploying your games, you might have checked by other game companies, would have been the cloud, where they deploy it on a Amazon Web Services cloud, or even the Google cloud. This is mostly for multiplayer games, by the way. And if you're going for a single player approach of games, it again comes back to square one of Windows, either on your native desktop PC or else mobile phones. And then comes the publishing and marketing part of your games, which involves publishing a game either on Google Play Store or Steam or any other game distributor platform. And marketing is another one more approach where you try to promote your game as much as possible, which we won't probably be looking into it, but plays a very crucial part as well, especially if you're a solo developer trying to make a living out of it. And then coming to it, now we did see the life cycle of how these processes work with, but when there is a mountain of difference between a project of uh, a project of 4 people and a complete game company with around 2,000 employees working on a single game. So how do game companies handle these? How do they come up with the responsibilities? How do they come up with the positionings, the job listings, and everything, so that they can hire employees and hire developers to get their project done with? In that sense, they divide this part into a lot of parts, being the ideation phase and design phase coming under one circumstance, which is handled by a certain set of people called the game designers. Then the whole development phase coming under game programmers and game developers both alike, and the game artists again coming through the art phase, and then come the business oriented people who look through the publishing and marketing of this game. So looking into like all these listings that I've mentioned, these all constitute very much into this single framework called as game development. So when you're saying the making of a game, there might be the magnitude of what you're explaining with, or the magnitude of people that are involved in might differ it considerably. So once you look now that if you check out over here, like you have, as I mentioned in the 3 parts, as I said, game artists, game designers, and game programmers, leaving testers aside, game testing and game debugging aside, you can see there are a bunch of like roles I have mentioned over here in game development, where these so-called game companies try to hire and try to get their money upon, where you have people who program the engine. As I said, game engine is something that works in the back end of trying to get the game running for good. So, and this this is the most technically heavy aspect of game development, where you have to program the engine from scratch, either using one of the system programming languages, be it C++, C, or JavaScript or Java, and so. Then come the physics programmers, the graphic programmers, and yes, graphic programmers play a, are currently the highest paying aspect of any game company, because they are that crucial. And this is because one thing I can suggest you is that since graphics is something which takes up a lot of processing power, and the amount of the demands that they require for memory and for memory management is very huge. So, and that is why there is any good programming language that has efficient memory management is uh, is pretty much a leader in this competition of which programming language is better for game development. And currently the leading one being C++, which might be pretty obvious since it is very good in handling memory as well. Then come the AI programmers. You might have noticed why AI programmers are there for. You probably have seen a lot of games with artificial intelligence in it. And then come the scripting programmers and gameplay programmers. These two guys fall under the same domain of development, as both of them try to integrate themselves with the game designers and game artists and try to bundle up the game for publishing. Then come the porting engineers. These guys are technically not part of a game company, not for many. There are a few people. There are a few people who work as porting engineers in game companies, who try to create the game ports for either outdated games which are trying to get into a new console, or trying to get console games of exclusive console game exclusive into the PC. Uh, in a more open sourced way, like in a more community perspective, these guys are called as emulation developers. You might have you might know how what game emulators are, be it for the Nintendo DS emulator or a PSP emulator, which you might have seen on which you might have used on your mobile phones, probably some of you. So these guys constitute an important part of making sure that you can port a game into a new device, which also involves a lot of hardware knowledge, including your software expertise as well. Then come the networking engineer and cloud architects, which constitute mainly for live service games, like any game that you play of the current generation. Then going to the game design part, as I said, these are the guys who are the backbone of any decision making process in your game development part. That being a concept designer, a UI designer, VFX meaning virtual effects. You can try looking into it. Virtual effects are basically any visually appealing mechanics that you see in any game, be it a well implemented snowfall, or to even much more advanced. The sound effects, shortly known as SFX in designers, are where they engineer the audio according to the player's experiences. And then you have a level designer, creative director, and a game writer. These being mostly towards the creative part of game design. Level design, you probably might have seen map development and trying to design maps according to whatever game it is. Yeah, as currently I have now mentioned the non-technical or the more creative aspects of game design, but there are also game design postings where there is a good amount of computer science background to it as well, where mainly under the name of game analysts or game data scientists. These guys are also come under the name of balance designers, where they try to look into the balancing of this game, who closely work with the game developers and try to get data and analyze that data and look into balancing the game by tinkering with the parameters involved in that engine. And they play a very huge role in terms of the longevity of the game. If you want any game that runs today, is popular in the long run, has a good amount of data scientists behind it. be it a mobile game or a desktop game. Then coming to the then coming to the extremely creative part of game development are the game artists, where you create assets and any models related to the game. Anybody who's interested in who's interested in tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, any Adobe creative tool, creative kit, probably could try game art and also develop their portfolio from that aspect as well. Technical, the only like the one out of all the artist parts which I have mentioned over here, so the most important role that any artist has to offer in a game company is the technical artist post, where they try to where they try to have communicate with the game programmers and game designers, and these are also people with a background in computer science and with a good amount of graphics knowledge within them. So and try to optimize and bring out development modules, so that artists working on a certain custom game, trying to integrate it into the final build, are all done in a much more easier perspective. And these are all thanks to this certain amount of individuals named as technical artists. So moving on, before we go, I'll just check. There are a good amount of people going to it. I'll try to answer it later if it's fine. Okay, so now that we have looked into like how the game engines work, game engines work or game frameworks work, or how game companies try to look into this as a career module, we need to take a step back, start from square one, and look into a more personal preference of what is the perks of game development, why do we need game development, as why do I need to try game development. So you can either look it up as a hobby or as a career. It's up to you, but there are perks from either both of them anyways. So if you want to start as a hobbyist and you're new to imagine if you're new, like suppose if you're new to programming and you want to try, and you got a good amount of knowledge from learning either from boot camps or any tutorials, and you want to get started with the project. So you want to get an idea of how software works, how software development works. And if you want to as a part of getting started, usually game development projects are somewhat of a first term preference, or like an easier preference into like getting started into or taking your first steps into software development. This also gives you a good idea on computer graphics, which also triumphs outside the game dev industry as well. Any good graphics are extremely necessary for any development field, be it any of the skills that you are looking out for. And if you are very much interested or intrigued about how this industry works, or the behind the scenes of any game development part, getting some knowledge upon how getting some knowledge on a certain engine or a certain framework would probably give you a better idea of how this game is being made or not. So it's as a hobbyist, it mainly ends up on your penultimate interest and how you look into it. As a career, if you're looking at from a career perspective, it is a well-established industry. I don't really need to elaborate on it for myself. You probably know how how good game development is as an industry, and most of the target audience over here is a young consumer base, which promise a good amount of profits as in this industry. There are a good amount of studios emerging currently in India, with them some being located in Pune, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. Mainly, I think Ubisoft and Zynga are the current AAA industries in India, which are active in taking internships and job postings. There are startups as well, and I think another notable company would be EA Sports in Hyderabad. Then comes Then comes the domain of XR development. So if game development projects are a very good portfolio builder for anybody looking into XR development. So what is XR development? XR in short, XR is basically a short form for extended reality. Extended reality is, you no need to be overwhelmed for anyone listening, hearing about it for the first time. Extended reality is basically the amalgamation of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. Virtual reality, you might have known any, if you have any knowledge of how VR games work, I'm pretty sure you know how, what virtual reality is. Augmented reality is kind of like Pokemon Go. The whole process of how Pokemon Go works is kind of what augmented reality represents. And mixed reality is basically a combination of these, of both VR and AR. So if you're looking into if you're, and this is a very high industry, very high in demand industry currently in India, with many companies trying to take in AR and VR developers, because this doesn't only XR development doesn't only branch in sorry doesn't only AR and VR doesn't only branch in game development as well. It branches outside game development, in the fields of healthcare and even big data. You could probably check up onto it, and you would probably have a good idea of how it works. Yes, there was a question about how there was a question. I will try to answer these once the session is done. So yeah, a little patience, please. So yeah, anybody is trying to get started in AR and VR development, you probably one of the good tools for it are provided by Google as well, on the name of AR Core and AR Kit. So hope you, if you want, you can just give it a little exploration, or you can just explore it a little and try to check it out if you're, and you can probably develop an interest in a very well in demand industry as well. So coming to the prerequisites, now we did get a question on how to get started in game development. There are a little, so I will be explaining about how the prerequisites work in game development. You need to you need to have a little background of knowledge before you get started on doing your game development projects as well. This can be by either starting with a game engine. If I'm hoping like many of you would have heard of Unity or Unreal Engine. I'm sure many of you would have heard of Unreal Engine, or anybody who is interested in playing games or so. And the Godot engine. Currently Unity, Unreal, and Godot are the most popular or the most used game engines currently out there in the community, and which are active in development, and which has a good amount of community supporting behind it whenever you're stuck in a certain problem. If you're more inclined towards the programming part, you can always try out frameworks more than game engines. Not to say that game engines are really weak in programming or so. But if you're looking for if you're looking in emphasis upon like programming stuff, you want to improve your programming skills in a certain language, trying out a framework in that certain language could be a good starter for you all. And this could be either by either using one of the frameworks mentioned below. I will mention these later, like regarding these. I will probably link you a bunch of resources in order to get started with this, so that you don't have to like waste your time and just googling all over the internet. And for those who are interested in web development, especially, you can try out various frameworks like 3.js and Babylon.js. I'm sure there might be juniors over here who might have heard of 3.js, which is a 3D rendering library. So that might not come as a surprise for them. For Phaser.js is a game engine is a game engine which kind of works in the efficiency of a framework in order to create 2D games. My point of advice would be to start out with any popular tool. If you're starting out as a game developer, you can then probably go into anything of your choice later. Like if you want to like get started, and if you don't want to get stuck in a certain part of the development process, it is advisable you start with with any game engine or game framework that has a good amount of which has a good amount of people, or which has a rich community behind it, so that they can help you with the ongoings of how this works. And also the disadvantage with a rarely used or a growing engine is that there might be a lot of instabilities or a lot of discrepancies behind it. So a little point of advice. And of course, a game development, coming to the programming part, you need to know how object oriented programming works. With currently every game engine and every game framework adapts this concept of object oriented programming. There are, and of course the design behind this object oriented programming and how it is all structured behind is important as well. You need to have a bit of knowledge in order to get started with any sort of scripting or programming uh, for games. That being said, as of now, like in the past 2 years, there has been a more data oriented. There has been a more functional type of programming or a data oriented part of game development under the name of entity component system, uh, which is like so. Entity component system is basically the same amount of game programming patterns, but in a more data oriented way, where you don't really rely upon objects. So I'll just type it out. Uh, so entity component system is currently the buzz when you're trying to create a game engine or so, or if you're trying out a game engine. Currently, the community currently adapts a more hybrid approach of object oriented programming and entity component system. For programming and you're just trying out a game development as hobby, it is more advisable for that you stick onto the object oriented manner of things. Then coming to the most asked question, like how do I get started with game programming languages? Like what language should I do if I want to get started with game programming? In the before slide, I have showed you a few names like Reliab SDL, which are some sort of kits that you can use. I think I can show it. Okay, I'll link it to you later. But yeah, in terms of most popular, not in a sense popular, the most community preferred languages, or the languages that are used by any game company out there for any game development related stuff, or anything outside game development, uh, like 3D rendering or computer graphics and so. These uh, these these bunch of languages are somewhat vital in the industry as of now. C++ being a lot of engines like Unreal, and a lot of frameworks like Raylib, uh, SDL, and so are very much involved in C++. Every game company tries to create its engine from scratch. For that, it is if you're trying to create a game engine from scratch, even the game companies advise that you scratch you like if like you build a game engine from scratch using C++, because as I said, C++ gives you that option of handling your own memory, and it is very powerful, and most of the graphics APIs, or most of the graphic tools that you use in game development are written in C++. And of course Java as well. I'm sure you guys might have either heard of or played of Minecraft, and you might know how good Java is as a community when you're trying out game development. C stuff of course is mostly carried by Unity, and plays a crucial part in other game engines or game frameworks as well as a plugin with partial support. But if I had to say, if you're trying out a certain game engine, it is best that you continue with their preferred choice of language. Like for example, if you're trying out a JavaScript game engine and they give you a plugin for them to they give you an extension saying you can also write this is JavaScript code in C#. uh, I do advise you that you just continue with JavaScript and don't try don't really go into the other side of it, like other languages, unless you're really sure of it, because the partially supported languages in a game engine, most of the game engine functionalities might be limited to the secondary languages or the partially supported languages which I mentioned. And coming to here, Python as a game programming language is a bit controversial in a sense, because as you might any competitive programmers out here might know, like the compilation time for any Python, for any Python code base is slightly slower, or slightly takes more time than any language like C++ or Java. And when you're working in a project, like in a game which requires a lot of memory management and demands a lot of your hardware performance, stuff like stuff that Python has to provide might lack a little bit. That being said, this is only like strictly for the 3D side of games. When you're looking for 2D games, there is of course Pygame is a very popular in a sense. Then you also have there is also a 3D game engine under the name Panda 3D, but the community support of it hasn't been up to par. If you want, you could give it a try, and if you're really sure of your Python skills, sure, go ahead. No, there is no one stopping you. Then of course, usually dynamically typed languages are kind of a rarity in this field, but there are a few alternatives for Python. Like there are a few dynamically typed languages which are favored by the community. One in the sense in the name of Lua. If anyone has heard of this language, okay, so be it. But if it's the first time for you, I do have to say, like Lua is pretty famous in this field, in this community. Many game engines like Cry engine or any other engine has Lua script support, because of faster compilation times compared to Python. And last but not the least, Rust is, you could probably explore on Rust. Rust is some sort of, you probably might have heard of Rust because it's currently the hype as of now. Rust being its main selling point being it is good in memory management, and a sort of C++ inspired language. So if you want to check upon it, I do advise upon it, but it's still in the growing phase of still in the development of a good game engine or a game framework. So as of now, I've been talking a lot about this terms of game engines and game frameworks, but what really are they, and what is the difference between both of them? So game engines, the main difference between both of them being, if you want to really make a game and want to like publish it onto a mainstream site, then usually the game engines are your choice of preference. But if you want to get into the depth of it, if you want to really polish up your programming skills, then it is of course a game framework. But yeah, if you're looking into game development as a career option, then yeah, you need to have at least knowledge about one game engine, because the knowledge of graphics that you get from a game engine is far more superior than you get from a game framework. And your graphic of knowledge is what your knowledge in graphics and physics is what any game company would ask you in an interview. So, and then game engines and game frameworks, like the frameworks, game frameworks are like sort of libraries, a set of libraries which try to cater for audio user inputs, the video aspect of games, the window management, and graphics graphics, where they try to call in APIs and try to bundle up a game. Whereas game engines have a more user friendly approach to it, where they try to develop tools and try to get it done much more faster than you would have done coding for it. Game engines use scripts more than use scripts so that where you write the game logic, which is basically the whole logic that is involved in playing the game. Like so for example, starting the game, the whole gameplay and ending the game, that is the basic, that is the whole broader perspective of game logic, you could say. And that is what they use, which is then read by the engine and compiled according to it. But in a framework, this might be a little bit different, where you have to do everything from scratch. And it, of course, it is lighter in weight than an engine. Game engines, in a sense, there are a lot of non-technical workings in the game development field as well, or in a game company. And you usually try to cater for both game designers and programmers. So game engines are somewhat that bridge connected with between a game programmer and a game designer, where if you look into Unreal, if anybody has looked into Unreal, you do realize they have this sort of visual scripting type of coding, where instead of like coding the whole like coding in a language, they try to develop a game using graphical nodes and stuff, or in a more GUI related stuff. That is somewhat beneficial for the game designers, because they might not have a really good, they might not have a deep knowledge in game programming. But then again, this also increases the efficiency of any development phase in a game company, which is unlike a game framework, which is a lot more game programming oriented. Then again, if you want to get started with projects, and if you want to get started with 3D game projects, I do recommend you go with a game engine, because trying to there are a few 3D rendering engines in JavaScript, like 3.js is a good option if you want to continue with 3D. But then again, if you're looking for if you're looking for making a game with a lot of high level graphics, then you need to go into this sort of API known as OpenGL, which is again provided in a much more easier perspective in these game engines. For that, Unity, Godot, and Unreal are the top 3 preferences, like the most preferred over here. There are other game engines, but it is like if you're starting out, going out with trying out the popular ones are sort of what anybody would do. If once you're like used to how to like getting used to an engine, sorry, like if once you are used to like going through an engine, knowing how it works and stuff, the whole process is somewhat similar between each and every engine. So you could try it out. You can then, which helps you in like trying out other engines as well. And so which also like doesn't let you get stuck in any part if you're facing a problem. And that too with the engine with not a really big community support. So, and if you're trying to go for 2D game projects, then a good amount of frameworks are available on the net. You can just type out game frameworks or so, and you would get with a bunch of those. And you can try coding it in your language of interest. These contributions are of course done in the form of mechanics implementations. Every game project that you do starts off with a prototype, which is like the most basic implementation of your whole game, which you then polish again and again, and trying to create your final draft, which is either ready for publishing up to your choice or not. And of course, as I mentioned, the whole deployment part of the deployment scheme of things. So yeah, if currently, there were 5 people who wanted to know something, right? Okay. So are these language arranged in preference? Okay, the languages which I have shown over here, okay, these languages, right? I'm sure you mentioned these, right? So these don't have like a sort of hierarchy or ranking or so. These are somewhat what the community prefers, and these are good in its all of these languages are good in its own way, except for like Python and Rust, which are somewhat more of like developing games in order to learn that language than in order to create something according to the market demands. That's what I'm trying to say. And yeah, just asking what is preferred for mobile game dev. Yeah, dude. the whole mobile game dev, if you're looking for anything mobile game dev, it is Unity. The whole all the job listings for mobile game development and anything that you want to make is very well optimized for the two of the engines which I've mentioned, being Godot and Unity. Unreal does support for mobile engineering, but sometimes when you're trying to create according, like depending upon the game you're trying to develop, if it unless it is like a triple A game with really high level graphics, Unreal might be a little heavy for your phone hardware, or might be sometimes overkill for your game. Do remember that every game project in every game project performance is somewhat of a high priority. Can we do game programming using only JavaScript? Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, as I mentioned, like JavaScript has certain game libraries in order to support like programming games in JavaScript. You can even do it in vanilla JavaScript as well. But as you want, like when you're getting, that only works when you're trying to get started out and you're trying to like learn the language and so on. But if you're like really serious on creating a game, you can you would really have to try out one of these game libraries, which might make things easier for you. Trying to do everything from scratch might take some time, might take a lot of time. So depending upon that, it's up to your preference of whether you want to do it from scratch or whether you want to use some library, a bunch of libraries, and try to create the game from scratch as well. In the end, libraries are something that assist in your development. That's what I really have to say. So yeah, as I said, I wanted to like I did say I would send you link, right? So right over here is a list of all the like game engines and game frameworks which I've mentioned over here, according to its language and according to its community interest, and what is the preferred, what is preferred, and what is a good starter, and so what is beginner friendly, what is intermediate, or what is way above the beginner's level of knowledge. You could give it a try. You could do check it out if you're really interested in trying to get a game or so. And if so, this actually wanted to like send out a form, like you juniors probably might have known of the like the technical club projects. So I just wanted to know like what are your language of interest and what game, like what frameworks and engines you might prefer. I'll probably try mailing it to everyone. If anybody wants to try get involved in a game development project as well, you can try contacting me as well if you want, and under this number or even under my Discord. I'll just type my number over here. So yeah, those who are in Discord, I think you'll probably find me in the like in the official beta lab server or even on the AAAT servers as well. So yeah, feel free to like DM me stuff if you want to like get started on any game development stuff. So yeah, cool, dude. Yeah, good to have you. So yeah, thank you all. This is the session for today. Like, I hope you have had some takeaways from this session as well, and hope to see you in some game development projects as well.
Sure, Bhaiya. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, so yeah, guys, go ahead and fill the form, and then we will try to mail it to your college accounts from the technical club's email. All right, then you all can ask questions if you want to, or we can end the session.
Yeah, we'll probably wait for like 5 minutes and then we can end it.
Sure. Okay. Got it.
Okay. And I know nothing about it. Sure, dude. Yeah, like game dev is more catered towards like those are trying to get started in software development in their programming language of interest, because there are a lot of game related stuff for each and every language out there. So you can give it a try. First year students can participate in game development project. Yeah, sure. Each and like most of the technical club projects are catered towards, I think it's catered towards your juniors as well, like over the first year students. So, and this is all and that is mostly like aiming towards like getting you into the software development part of stuff. I know Python or C++, but going to learn JS. So in the form, shall I fill JS as third preference? Yeah, sure, dude. Yeah, no problem. Do and yeah. Yeah, I will try send. Okay, I'll link the slides over here if you want. Okay, so wait, I'll share it. Right? Just give me a minute. Okay, so these are the slides for today. I hope it helps you. I don't know anything. Can I participate in game? Get this one. How was your experience? How has been your experience in game development? Okay, so you're asking me like, okay, how has been your experience? So are you asking me like how my personal journey through this journey through game experience, game development and stuff? Okay, so yeah. So as when in my first year, I did I did explore a lot of stuff, trying to know like I didn't know many of the I was also beginner in programming as well, but then yeah, I did spend a lot of time like exploring which engine should I use, which engine should I use in order to get career ready. What do you think about Unreal Engine 5? I think yeah, I mean I don't really have to like say it, right? I did also check Unreal Engine 5 as well. I did my second year project was involving Unreal Engine 5. Sorry, Unreal Engine 4. But Unreal Engine 5 currently is morely catered towards the next gen of games, right? You could say the current the current implementation that they did in the graphics programming side has been really revolutionary. So if I had to say anything about Unreal Engine 5, it's probably it's that much awesome and that insane. And yeah, if I had to like give a okay, is it record? Okay, Aditya, my voice is recorded or not? Okay, I just sent the word, right? Okay.
Yeah, it is being recorded.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's possible if I can just stop the recording.
Yeah, sure. Just a second.
Yeah.
Can I stop it or should I pause it?
Yeah. Stop it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think